Hello there. This week, Jesse Jackson called on President Obama to issue a general pardon for Hillary Clinton for any wrongdoing she might have done related to all of her email scandals. Jackson pointed to President Ford pardoning Nixon as an example of taking a step to heal a divided nation. Will President Obama spare Hillary from the Republican rod and prosecutors? And should he? Or will he punt to President-elect Trump so the next administration will have to deal with the big political spectacle and all of the fallout therein? Well, guess who's here? It's Judge Alex Ferrier, former Miami-Dade County Circuit Court judge. Welcome back, Judge.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this. I mean, how does a presidential pardon work if the woman hasn't been indicted?
Right. This is the thing. Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution gives the president the power to impose a pardon for any offenses against the United States.
How broad would it have to be? It's
very broad because he can pardon anybody before charges are filed, while the trial is proceeding, after a conviction. It doesn't make a difference. You'll remember that President Carter pardoned all of the draft dodgers in one swoop. He didn't have to even name them. He said anybody who violated the Selective Service Act between these years. And of course, President Ford, as you mentioned, pardoned President Nixon, and he did it based on time. From when he took office to when he left, I'm pardoning you for all crimes that may have been committed during that window. So the president has an incredible amount of power. Now we're hearing, of course, the illegal immigrants wanting him to pardon them for that. So could he do it? Absolutely, he could do it. Is it unusual? Yes, it's unusual, but it's not unheard of that a president pardons people who don't admit their guilt. Typically, they're supposed to admit their guilt.
And a lot of people are saying he's not going to do it because it's going to tarnish his legacy. And my question to you, like, what tarnishes his legacy more? Her losing because she was supposed to be the one who was going to preserve his presidency and the legacy, or does pardoning her?
I think there's a third. I think her being indicted and convicted tarnishes even more.
Okay.
But I think pardoning her, anybody can lose an election. You know, she was expected to win, but not overwhelmingly. Let's face it. She had a lot of baggage, but a pardon, you know, even though I think if he does it, he will step in and say, look, there's no need to pardon her, but these Republicans, clearly they're going to continue to go after her, so I'm just going to issue a pardon and put this to rest. But most of the country, including on the left, will say, the fix is in. This is dirty. That's just the way it'll look. And you'll remember that back...
And there were a lot of people that were saying that during the Democratic National Convention. There were a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters who felt like, you know, this establishment, this Democratic establishment, was aligned against him. And it was very unfair, and there wasn't justice where there should have been.
No, and you remember the questions were being fed to her during the debates against Bernie. And presidential pardons have been used improperly in the past. Well, at least in some respect. You'll remember that Hillary's brother, Hugh Rodham, collected $400,000 from 2 felons, and President Clinton pardoned them.
But the Clintons haven't done anything wrong ever.
Well, they claim they didn't know about it, but so generally, you know, there's sometimes a lot of tarnish that goes along with pardons. I'm not a big fan of pardons anyway. So could he do it? Yes, he absolutely could.
Well, and Jesse Jackson wants the president to say our long national nightmare is over. But I think the problem is Jesse Jackson, in saying that, probably thinks that he's healing the nation, but he's making Hillary Clinton look like Nixon.
Yeah, well, you know, Hillary could certainly tell the president she doesn't want a pardon.
Does she have to apply for one?
Typically, everybody does, Pardons are generally granted because a person applies, and then they're vetted through the Department of Justice. But again, you know, in that year where I mentioned that Clinton pardoned those 2 felons, a cocaine trafficker and another individual, there were 24 pardons granted to felons that never applied for pardons. So it doesn't have to, because the Constitution doesn't put that limitation on them. That is a limitation that's done by regulation.
I think that's the only thing that will put that behind us. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Trump pardons her early in his administration, just so the country can move on. You know, again, we talked about his unpredictability, and I think that would be a move that a lot of people don't see coming, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It would surprise me.
Because you don't think that he would extend that ultimate olive branch? Would that upset Republicans too much?
I don't think it would. I don't think it would move the country on that much, because I think that the Congress is going to do what it's going to do anyway, and if anything, it would lift the ability of her claiming the Fifth Amendment. She couldn't take the Fifth, and then they could force her to testify even if she didn't want to.
Even if she were pardoned?
Yeah, the pardon just takes off the criminal responsibility.
No way.
So she can then still be dragged before Congress, and she can be forced to testify.
The palace is so intriguing. All right, thank you so much, Judge.
It's great being here.
Thanks for coming by.
My pleasure.